Hello my friends, in this video I would like to share with you my results of testing 1080p video quality on Sony A6500, Panasonic G85 and Nikon D5500. I have done 3 tests, the landscape test, semi-macro test and moire test, so let's take a look at the results. First is the landscape test. I use same settings on all 3 cameras, ISO 200, 1/58 of the second, f8 and 25 frames per second in default picture setting on all cameras, and I'm using kit lenses on all 3 cameras. This is really challenging for 1080p video because there's a lot of details in this landscape shot, and after making the last 56 videos in 4K, looking at the footage from all 3 cameras, I have to say that they all look rather bad to me. I actually don't see much difference between these 3 cameras here on my 4K monitor, and I guess that after YouTube compression there is not going to be any notable difference in sharpness. But when we zoom to 300%, to me all of the footage still looks about the same in terms of sharpness. The same is basically true about 50 frames per second video or 60 frames per second video on Nikon, since that one cannot do 50 frames per second. Second test is semi-macro test, and here we can see that the Panasonic is the sharpest by significant margin, and it certainly looks the best. Nikon is visibly softer and Sony is the worst here. When we zoom to 300%, it is even more obvious, but that is not the final conclusion because I found out that Panasonic uses much more in-camera sharpening in different picture profile. If we apply a bit of sharpening to Sony and Nikon, at 300% you can clearly see that it was sharpened, but now they are much closer to Panasonic, and in standard 100% magnification the difference is very minor. So with Nikon and Sony, I definitely recommend taking a look either at sharpness settings in your editing software or in-camera sharpening. Panasonic is still the best, but in real-world usage and in less demanding situations the differences are really small, but with Sony and Nikon you need to figure out the settings. One more thing that I would like to point out here is how much difference does it make if you shoot in 4K even when you export at 1080p. The image quality is totally in different league in comparison with Nikon D5500 that can only shoot 1080p video. Noise is basically invisible at ISO 200 in 4K. Sony A6500 is a clear winner in 4K video quality because it uses downsampling from 6K video to 4K video and it has great sensor. Panasonic is also very good, but it uses a bit of cropping, and I'm not really sure what technology they use to output 4K video, but it is really very good, just not quite as good as Sony. And when we zoom into 150%, we can see that the difference is actually very significant in favor of Sony, which is much sharper. So if you have G85, A6500 or A6300, I recommend shooting in 4K even if you export in 1080p. The last test that I've done is the test of compression artifacts or moire. I've tested it on paper with printed lines. I won't show you full screen because it would hurt your eyes or maybe even cause you headache. This is really extreme test of moire. All of the cameras show some artifacts, but unless you encounter some really difficult situation, you shouldn't have significant problems that would ruin your footage. Sony is probably the best one here. Nikon has some issues. On Panasonic it looks terrible on screen while you are shooting, but the footage seems to be quite good. There are some artifacts, but the amount is acceptable in my opinion. So the conclusion is that Panasonic has the best 1080p video quality among these cameras, but if you use right settings on Sony and Nikon, you can get footage that is in real world usage almost indistinguishable. If you can, I recommend shooting in 4K even if you are exporting in 1080p, and moire is at acceptable level with all 3 cameras. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.